Thank you very much. I want to thank all of you for coming to this event. Not to correct my trustee, but it's my 9th year. It's hard to believe. I came in 2003. So this is the 9th opportunity to thank this community and to report to it. I do want to ask one other group to stand. I'm going to talk in this presentation a lot about the progress we've made. I'm going to talk about the role that philanthropy has played in that progress. But I also want to recognize those of you in administration on this campus who deliver the programs, the work that is necessary to achieve this progress. So I know I have a large group of people here who are donors as well as administrators at IUPUI, and I know I have at least one IU vice president, and if any others are here, I'd ask you all to stand because I want to thank you as we start this for the work that you do. Please stand, my colleagues. So whether they're deans or vice chancellors or vice presidents or chair of the faculty council, these are individuals that make so much happen here at IUPUI. And as you know, our slogan is IUPUI, where impact is made every day. And that's the theme that I want to talk about today. I want to talk about a report of how we've been doing in the last year, but I want to focus on how we've made progress in spite of the challenges. There is no one in this room who would say that the last 4 years haven't been, quote, exciting, full of opportunities, all of those things that the economic changes have produced. But one of the characteristics of an anchor institution is we don't have a choice to take a break. We have to do the work in spite of what goes on around us. That's the deal in a university, in a city, that we are partners with that community. And so I think we've done it by focusing clearly on our mission. We are Indiana's urban research and academic health sciences campus. That was the easiest sentence to write I've ever seen in a mission statement because it has the virtue of truth. It is just what is the case. And we have a responsibility in that mission to support the economic, cultural, and social development of central Indiana and beyond because that's our obligation. And by focusing on that mission, I think we've been able to consciously invest strategically. You're going to hear about public health several times today. Indiana is a state that, as Marie Swanson said, needs all the public health it can get. Because frankly, we got bad indicators on public health. And we are doing that very strategically. We've targeted other investments that you'll hear, and we've benefited enormously from our donors to make that happen. We have watched our budget. We have reduced costs where we can. This is a time to do that for obvious reasons, but we always need to do that. And I believe you always do that linked with innovation. Whether it's innovation in academic degree programs, we've create what we call 21st century degree programs, looking at interdisciplinary study that tie to economic development, that appeal to students. So for example, we created motorsports engineering, one of those program proposals that everybody said, what, we're not doing it already? And because we needed it. We got it. We attract astonishingly talented students. And it was a great innovative. And I can go through a lot more that I'm not going to save your lunchtime. We've got all of these programs, but that's the innovation that we've done. And we've also consciously sought new revenue sources, like all programs should be doing. And so we look at strategies. Dr. Sukatman, the Executive Vice Chancellor, said, let's shape the enrollment and try and get a better mix. We have 95% of our undergraduates are from Indiana. As a result, we have more Hoosier students on this campus than any campus in the state. And I hope all of you know we have 30,000 students, and 2 other campuses in this state have a lot more than that. We have a huge responsibility, but I would argue we need to have a better mix for education purposes. And that is one of the opportunities of international students, for example. It is, honestly, also a new revenue source. It's a differential tuition because taxpayers in this state essentially discount the tuition of our residents for us. So we need to think that way. We've thought about additional research areas. We've looked at auxiliary services. We've looked at all of these kinds of areas. What I'm going to focus on today is the campaign for IUPUI, called, of course, the Impact Campaign. With Amy Warner around, we are going to recycle good branding, and Impact is a good brand because, again, it has the virtue of truth. It is our job to make an impact every day, and the campaign depends upon having support of you in this room and those beyond to make that happen. The campaign has been structured on 4 themes. They are the core of what we do, our mission. Excelling as a center of health and life science, of course. Thriving as an urban research campus, making that connection to our community, looking at the issues that grow out of our community, championing civic engagement, one of our signatures, and of course ensuring extraordinary student success at the core of it. All of those are core mission for us, and that is what our campaign was structured about. Once again, trying to focus on mission, trying to align those missions. We set an amazingly bold goal for a campus that's only having its 2nd campaign. We said that we were going to try and raise $1,250,000,000. We have 15 months left, not counting the couple days left in this month. We have 15 months left. We have raised $1,144,000,000. So we're making great progress, but like any development person, I will stop and say, but we've got more to do. We have more to do because we have more work to do. It's not just the goal. And that's going to be the theme of what I talk about. I'm going to talk about in each of these 4 areas how the philanthropy has aided us recruiting and retaining talent, because people are essential to the success that we have in a campus and in our community, and how philanthropy has supported us programmatically, because campuses bring together people in programs and transform lives. And so that's how I'm going to focus on this, and I'm going to move through this to try and just give you a sample, and I'm going to resist my usual temptation to tell you one story after another about each one of these. It's really hard for me. That's why if you see me do this, that's usually I'm trying to speed myself up and not tell yet another story, okay? But it's because there are so many good stories to tell. But first I want to remind those of you who've been here before, and for those of you new, where this started for me was in 2003. I came here in the summer. Chancellor Bepko was then interim president Bepko of Indiana University. And I had that moment where you have to say, what are the key goals for the campus for the next decade? And I did something that Hoosiers were all too polite to tell me they thought was crazy. It took 2 years before anybody said this was crazy, and one of you in this room gave me great advice. I still remember her looking at me saying, go with your gut on this one as a new person. And she was right. I said I wanted to double the number of baccalaureate degrees granted by the campus because that is critical to the state. I wanted to double the research funding, external research funding, because that's the engine of the research enterprise, and that is critical to our impact, not only with our students, but our community beyond and the care that is provided in the health sciences. I wanted to double evidence of our civic engagement, and we decided we're going to focus on service learning because that is such a great example of bringing students together with civic life, bringing them, and we could, in fact, track that and see that. I wanted to see us improve our diversity on the campus because that was essential to great education and to serving our community. And they were doubling goals. Producing more than 2,000 additional baccalaureate degrees can't be done by writing a check. It takes years of work with people. And that's why it was crazy. But everyone was polite and said, okay, we'll try and figure out if he really means it. So here we are, 8.5 years later, and you're going to see the update on that as I talk about the campaign. First, what are our achievements as a health and life science center? What have we been able to pull off? What have we been able to do with this campaign? What have we been able to bring for talent? Most of you know Miles Brand was the president of the NCAA, had previously been president of Indiana University, and he was taken from us way, way too young by pancreatic cancer. His wife, Peg Brand, I'm proud to say, a member of the faculty, and his son, Josh, agreed to allow us to create a chair in his memory for cancer research. This was, to my knowledge, the most funds raised for any chair on our campus. It's one of the hardest cancers there is. And we were fortunate to recruit from Dartmouth University the chair of the Department of Medicine, Murray Cork, to be the first occupant of that chair. A man who's made pancreatic cancer the crusade of his career and left administration because he is so frustrated that they have not made the progress we need, and he wanted to have the last lives that he spent, years that he spent, to find that and improve and cure it. That kind of commitment was made possible because of philanthropy. It brought an enormously talented individual here who we would never have been able to approach. We would never have been able to sell that he should leave a great institution, a great position, to come here to take on one of the hardest problems there is in medicine. And it was the right thing to do. It's going to make a difference. And we have that commitment. That's the talent. We've seen great programmatic changes. The Glick family, as we know, an important philanthropic family in our community, and Marilyn Glick cares passionately about eyes, vision, and blindness. And Marilyn Glick, on the day we announced this project, said, "You're going to create the best institute in the world." Modest goals. A major gift for a building and an endowment for research to develop the program. It stimulated a gift for a chair, not from the Glicks, but the Letzers, and we've got that chair filled. In addition, it's improved the research funding so that we're seeing that. And of course, we have a spectacular facility for both clinical care and research. And by the way, if you haven't been in it, it has fabulous art. So if you just are an art lover, go there and see the beautiful art that is there. So that we've seen that growth in programmatic as well in this context. I could go on longer, but I'm going to stop and move on to urban research. I'm often asked, what's urban about research? Well, first, research is research. We need to do research. It's what a research university does. It is one of the unique characters of American higher education that we bring research together with education. In Europe, oftentimes they're separated. In France, they're separate institutions typically. We bring them together. But what's distinctive about urban research is the problems of many, but not all of our colleagues come out of the experience and the felt need of our community, the need to serve. And with all the programs we have that are clinical programs, practice programs, it's not surprising that we have many, many of our colleagues who study things related to improving the human condition. And so that's that drive, that's that focus that we talk about. And I'm going to talk about some of the talent. This is in the category of retaining one of the great talents of our campus. Bob Einturns is one of the co-founders of our partnership in Moi University in Kenya, partnership with the AMPATH program, partnership with almost everything global coming out of the School of Medicine, an enormous partner with many of you in this room, an inspiring person, and thanks to Don Brown, we've been able to give him a professorship of global health. Don is from Interactive Intelligence, and this was one of those things he wanted to do, and it supports a leading member of our faculty, a real colleague who has helped drive lots of work that has changed and saved lives. But the Kenya program has many, many supporters. Eli Lilly and Company's foundation has provided over $40 million of in-kind gifts that support treatment in oncology and mental health and diabetes in the MOE program. Work that could not be done without that kind of gift that we got from the Eli Lilly and Company Foundation. Oh, but in addition to that, they gave us, to start public health into becoming a school, $1 million grant that helped launch that effort and gave us some of the startup money that was critical in our development of that program, which then helped us make a commitment from the campus to support some investment strategically. And we were able to ask our colleagues at the Fairbanks Foundation for support for a grant to launch what will be, but is not yet officially, a School of Public Health here on this campus. And Fairbanks was enormously generous and committed their largest grant ever to us of $20 million to create that school, which we will launch this summer. And our colleagues over here at Table 5 are people, including Betsy Bykoff from Fairbanks, that have helped make that happen. And we need that. A great example of problems that in our community, public health challenges, that we've developed research and focused on it from the very beginning. So that kind of work is really clear, I think, to most of us, is urban research. Here's one that might not be so obvious to some of us. The Center for Religion in American Life has received support from the Lilly Endowment. The Lilly Endowment, most of you know, but most of you don't know that of their 3 areas of focus, religion is one. It is a significant part of their investment in the world. And one of the areas is religious studies. And so our center has been funded by that. And most recently, they've supported the Bible in American Life. Now, if you believe we study our communities, part of our community is its religious life. Part of it would be the role of the Bible. And that made sense for us here, I believe, to do that kind of research. Similarly, some of you know we have the Lake Institute for Faith and Giving, supported by a gift from the late Karen Buttry and her husband. And that gift established the Lake Institute. This last year, an anonymous donor gave us an additional gift to endow the directorship of the Lake Institute and name it after Karen Lake Buttry, who passed this last year. And that is currently occupied by a former member of the religious community here, Bill Enright from Second Presbyterian. You see the connections that go back and forth between the community and the life of the community and research and philanthropy. And that is really the nexus that I wanted to talk about urban health. One final example, public policy is a critical example of urban research. Our Public Policy Institute and the Center for Urban Policy and the Environment is responsible for doing the work on the famous Kernan-Shepard report, which produced such lively discussion in Indiana by proposing the elimination of townships and a few other not small things. As you see, Justice Shepard and former Governor Kernan and the current governor, and that's John Krause beside them, who is the person who directed that project. Another great example of an important issue in our community, and this institute is funded by the Lilly Endowment as well. Doubling research, as I say, I always present these data. I never like bends downward in curves, but I want you to know that that highest curve of $400 million was a 99% increase over where we were in 2000. We literally almost doubled that year, within a percent of our target. That's an astonishing achievement. It did go down to only $331 million, which is our second highest ever, as you can see, and is explained entirely by one grant not being received twice. We got it in the 1 year. So it's an enormously significant improvement, and it's one we expect to see that line continue to move up. Let me talk about civic engagement. And I'm going to do this in a couple different ways. I hope all of you know that you are, and I am, privileged to be on a campus of incredible commitment to our community, so much so that we have essentially received every important award in the United States for civic engagement. From the very first President's Award that was given by the US President, we received one of the three, the only research campus that did so, to the honor roll 3 out of the last 4 years in that same competition. We have won it from the Washington Center, we win it from the Kellogg Foundation. It's been recognized, and what I love about it, it's been recognized because we, our colleagues and students and faculty, have done the work. So I'm not going to emphasize that. I'm going to talk about a specific project that illustrates the kind of connection of civic engagement to urban research to, in fact, bringing together all in one. And that is translating research into practice. You heard mentioned in the introduction that this has been a focus that we have emphasized on the campus. It's been a focus because we realized when Sandra and I came here that this was one of the strengths of the campus, but it was not being brought together and celebrated in the way we felt it should be. And I want to give credit to Sandra Petronio, who I hope all of you know, who's sitting up here in front in the jacket and is getting embarrassed because I'm about to tell her to stand up and let me recognize her, because I don't do this to her, you know, every time. So please stand up. Let me. Maybe worth doing just to see how embarrassed I made her. I wanted to do that because it was Sandra driving home one day who looked at me, I was driving, and said, "You realize we're on the most translational campus we've ever been on in our lives." And I looked at her, but that might not be appropriate. I said, "You know, you're right." And we began the Translating or TRIP initiative that began from that conversation to celebrate the work that's being done, which is taking work into the community, whether that community is in Kenya or whether it's in South Indianapolis, whether or not it is in our prisons, whether or not it's in our schools. And so we began a project, and you can go to the website at IUPUI and then look for TRIP, and it'll come up and show you the faculty who do this kind of work. And we got so serious about it, we made hero cards. So Ali Jafari is right here, and Carl McDormand, and I've got a lot more of them that explain what this work is that they're doing. And that is critical, I believe, for this campus, because we can make such a difference in the lives of our community by rewarding and supporting those of you who do this kind of work. Whether it's delivering dental care, I just saw John Williams, in the neighborhoods, whether or not it is taking research and literally trying to reduce recidivism on those individuals coming out of juvenile detention centers that is being done by Roger Jarjurwa. So we've got these opportunities. Now, who's this guy in the picture? Because this is our colleague in communication, Howard Giles, who's a distinguished professor at the University of California at Santa Barbara. This is an individual who is a British-trained scholar who I remember looking at his record when I was the same age he was and realizing that he only had 5 times as many publications at the same age and 4 more books than I had at that time. And that kind of talent studied primarily how people communicate between groups. And it could be occupational groups or ethnic groups, it could be age groups. And he's done this work now for an additional number of years that I won't name in this work. And he keeps being invited all over the world to talk about this, and we realized he's doing some amazing work now that applies here in translating research into practice. Here's a guy who's a star at a campus who decided to join the Reserve Police, partly for citizenship involvement, partly because he's an obsessive hard worker, and partly because I think he believed he could do something. And so here he is now, the person who's on call 24 hours a day for things like hostage negotiations, because he understands how to work between people who have different worldviews. So we're asking him to come here to talk about what happens when police departments and other law enforcement who work in different organizations come together to work. This matters. This is how people make mistakes that are life-causing, life-ending errors. This has happened in firefighters oftentimes when these groups come together. So he'll be here in this room, March 22nd, to talk about that. And we know we have people who can share that kind of interest. An example of a world-class scholar of the kind of people we have here at our campus. Now, much closer to home, you've already heard mentioned the involvement of our tourism management program in the Super Bowl. What you may not realize is that the development of the Legacy Project, one of the pieces of that, it was, of course, a fitness center. The East Side had no available fitness center, and it has serious health issues on the East Side. And so what they did is they created a grant through J.P. Morgan Chase that went to the Solution Center on our campus, and we've hired our colleagues in PE and tourism to develop a program building recreation as part of that facility. In addition to that, as you've heard mentioned, they also are the people who developed the Super Service program that trained all of our hospitality workers and was why you heard for days, have a super day. And what it showed, of course, is that we could train that level of performance and success. But that's the kind of engagement, that's the kind of involvement that we can do translating our work and giving back to our community across the campus. One final example of this is one that I've talked about mostly focusing in the past. This is the Center for Earth and Environmental Sciences, worked with Veolia and now Citizens Water, and also with the Laura Hare Charitable Trust. And the focus has always been on the water quality. These are the people who actually changed the taste of the water in Indianapolis over the time I've lived here, okay? Some of you who are new wonder what that was. Those of you who are older know what it did. And it's dramatically improved it. But the secret here is, while they were doing that scientific work, what they were also doing was bringing middle school and other elementary school children and their teachers in with the support of now Citizens Water and the Trust in order to educate about science and how science applies to the environment, to try and stimulate students not only for science, but particularly for environmental science, which is so important to our future, and it'll resonate, we believe, with young people and encourage them to pursue careers in science, which is one of our goals. It's a great example of how philanthropic support led to educational as well as support that we had for contract research that led to this. Here's our evidence on service learning. This is the kind of curve I like. It's up 4 times since 2003. 8,000 of our undergraduates last year registered for service learning courses. This is not, I spent an hour, picking up trash. This is a course that they all took. This is an astonishing. And remember, we only have 22,000 undergraduates. 8,400 of them were in service learning last year. This is one of the best measures of our success, of what we've done. Student success is the obvious transition out of that one. And I want to talk about this focusing first I always embarrass poor Cora by using this photo. This is our trustee. And I do this today because of the BEPCO Scholars Program. Philanthropy is an important piece of the BEPCO Scholars Program. It has allowed us to recruit to this campus amazingly talented students. We've had 132 BEPCO scholars since this program was begun. Virtually every one of them could have gone somewhere else that has a very famous name. And they came here partly because of this support, partly, we hope, because of the degree programs, partly we hope because of the city, partly they might have liked our residence halls, not Ball Hall maybe, but they might like the apartments, partly because we hope this was the right place for them. But we're graduating these students. Some of them, like Cora, are going to our graduate programs. That's part of the option. You become a fellow then if you do that. This has changed the character of our campus, and as you've heard me say before, some of you, it didn't just change the BEPCO scholars' lives. It changed the other students in the class, and it changed the professors' teaching. Professors talk about what happens when one of these students challenge everybody to perform at an even higher level. Another example of success and why we're committed in terms of philanthropy is the RISE Scholarship. This is the Research, International, Service, and Experiential Learning Opportunities. And it's a scholarship program where a donor gives $20,000. We take the interest off that, is a scholarship of roughly $1,000, so that they are literally philanthropy that leads to helping students be more successful. And of course, we hope more involved in our community, improving our community, and becoming, in fact, more integrated to our community. We have seen great progress in graduating students on this doubling goal. We are up 54%. The Chancellor would remind everybody that's not 100% yet, so we've got work to be done. But we are up over 1,200 graduates last year who would not have graduated if we were at the level we were in 2002. And we know the single biggest predictor of a city's economic success is the percentage of adults over 25 with baccalaureate degrees and above. We have to keep driving this number. That is our challenge. And Brian Payne from Central Indiana Community Foundation and I work together on the talent dividend trying to do this, but we depend on all of us to do that, as I'll get to in a moment. We have made great progress in diversifying our faculty. We have over 100 more faculty, diverse faculty than we had in 2003. I can tell you on the students, which I don't have a graph for, we now are entering first-year class matches the diversity of Central Indiana test takers in high school, the ones who take the SAT and ACT, which is the best marker, we believe, of who's the population coming to the university. So we've made great progress, to be honest. I think we can do better there, but that is progress, and that is a key part of ensuring student success. Because I don't believe long-term you're successful if you are not educated in an environment that reflects the communities that we are part of. And we have to make sure that happens. I want to come closer to the end of this by going back over some of the transformational gifts we've received in this campaign. And they stitch together these four themes, I think, quite nicely. First, the Cox Scholars Gift was the largest gift ever to Indiana University for scholarships. 2/3 of the money went for Bloomington, where Jesse graduated from, and we were fortunate that he invested 1/3 in our city, where he earned his living. And that third was $29 million. It is supporting students who must work as part of their education because Jesse truly believed that's what was a key to his and Beulah's success, was that combination of needing to work. The Lilly Endowment supported us with $60 million for the Physician Science Initiative. This is a translational grant looking at bench research in medicine and carrying it right to the bedside. That's an example that has been very important to us. The Simons, Melvin and Bren Simon, gave the gift for the Simon Cancer Center. Not only half of it was for the facility that's directly behind you where you can't see it, the Simon Cancer Center building, but the other half was to create an endowment for research, which is critical, obviously, for cancer. I already mentioned the Glick Eye Institute. I mentioned the Fairbanks Foundation, which really is going to propel us, I believe, to have not just a running start, but a racing start to a public health school that we need so much, building on work that many of you here have already done. The Vera Bradley Foundation continues to support in this campaign the breast cancer research here on the campus, and that's been very important. And then finally, but not least, the most recent major gift was December 1st, the announcement that Bob McKinney was giving $24 million to support the School of Law at Indianapolis, which is now the IU Robert H. McKinney School of Law. And frankly, it was one of the great days. If you get a chance to see a photo of the people that day and the atrium of the law school, and you weren't there, you'll be stunned. Every space was full of people, every space. And Bob McKinney was radiant. It was so fun to see somebody so pleased that this was doing what he wanted, and his children as well. And the reason I emphasize this is because when we talk about philanthropy at its best, it's when a donor's desires for greatness match our commitment to deliver it together. And Bob challenged us. He said in public, or else we couldn't say it, that if we get that school to the top 30, there'll be a positive impact as a result. All right? And he was clear about that. My colleagues at the Fairbanks Foundation have been clear from the beginning that they wanted an enormously successful school of public health that delivered on improving public health in our community and state. And that's the challenges that these gifts give us. But the same thing is true of the gifts that individuals give that support students and faculty in their work. That's the match we love to make. And that's what I believe has made this campaign move as far as it has, because of that commitment to the work and then finding the support for it. Every year I'm asked what you all can do, and so I've learned to end with a slide that says, and there are a couple things I really do think at this time that are important for you that you can help. In this time of economic pressures and controversies, I think it's critical that we continue to communicate the value of education to economic development. I can guarantee you I am convinced of the value of education to personal development. I can guarantee you I can give that speech for a long time, but I have less optimism that that will affect decision makers. I do believe it is essential to economic development, and I hope that if you help communicate that, we can, in fact, be successful in that area. And that's why I'm willing to say the next point, which is I do believe we together need to advocate greater strategic investments in education and research. You're never going to hear me argue for general increases. I think people expect, and we expect of ourselves, strategic investments to make a difference. And philanthropy illustrates what I mean. When you have a conversation with a donor about how you can make your law school better, how you can create public health, how you can improve in an area, that's this kind of strategic thinking we have to take not only to our donors, but to investments from the state and the federal government. I believe that's the way it works, and then we have to deliver on those investments. And finally, all of us here need to continue to advocate to our children and adults to complete college. I think for those of us who were lucky enough to have a fairly traditional education, I finished in 4 years. I had family support for half of that time. In my family, if you got married, you lost it. That's not our students. 27% of our undergraduates have children. Some of you in this room went through college with families. It ain't easy, and we need to support them, those people going through in these complicated lives, with the commitment that it makes a difference to finish. Because frankly, it does. We know that. But it's hard, so I encourage you to do that. So thank you for coming here today, but more, thank you for your partnership with IUPUI, your partnership as a community, as donors, as members of this campus who've made such a difference. And as you leave, I would ask you to do one thing. Ask yourself what we would be like if all of us hadn't made that commitment to build this place and build this success. Because we won't do that. We've moved ahead. And so let's do that first, and then imagine how much we can do in the next 40 years. Because it was unimaginable in 1968 that we'd be here today with a 30,000 student campus and $400 million in research support and over 3,000 graduates, undergraduate, and the largest medical school class this year in the United States, and I could go on and on. It makes a difference what we do from here out. So thank you very much.